Hello and welcome to Watching Worst Films. My name is Jericho Reed. With me, Kyle Szymanski.
Hello,
We
hello.
are your guide to Razzie history, and we are back with an unadvertised special as we have an incredible episode for you, as we have been lucky enough to be graced with the presence of John Wilson, the founder of the Razzies. Mr. Razzie himself is on the show.
Mhm.
Thank you so much and welcome to Watching Worst Films, John.
Welcome, welcome.
Thank you for inviting me, and let's start off with the sound this whole thing is based on. Back off from your headphones. In America, that's called a raspberry or a Bronx cheer. I don't know what you guys call it over there.
I've never heard the
Mhm.
Bronx cheer thing. Kyle, do we have
Never
any
heard Bronx cheer.
Scottish thing?
I
Well,
think
I
it was
went.
there must have been a Bronx baseball team or something that really sucked in the
Yeah, I
40s
can
and
see
50s.
why.
And when the
Uh-huh.
crowd got mad at the team, they would blow a raspberry.
I like it as a kind of like Irish exit thing. Like I can understand how it would come about. Let's get things started at the beginning. So I know the story's out there. We've read it in your book, but hearing it directly from you, can you give us a quick rundown of how the Razzies began? So it was a double bill of Can't Stop the Music and Xanadu, is that right?
Well, in 1980, I
Yep.
was working for a company that made movie trailers. And my boss asked me to handle the paperwork for the company to sponsor a film festival. And I said, I'll do it, but you got to cut me a deal here. I get to see and use every ticket you don't want.
Oh,
So
wow.
between that and the fact that I still had connections from having managed a movie theater in college, I kept a list. I actually saw 250 movies in 1980.
Wow.
And when you see that many, it becomes quite obvious that the odds do not favor the other end of the scale from the Razzies.
Yeah.
They favor the kind of stuff we've been making fun of for 44 years. And yes, it was a double feature. I paid 99 cents and I thought they were so awful I actually asked for my money back as I exited the theater. And when the guy said no way, I was angry enough. I mean, they were enjoyably bad, but they were just inept in the extreme.
Yeah.
But when he said that, I remember it was August of 1980. I drove home from the movie theater with my windows down because it was hot. And in my head, I was going, you know what? There should be an award for movies this bad. There's an awful lot of them out there. In fact, I had worked on the campaigns for several of them that year. And I just started riffing in my head. I used to do an Oscar party where people would come over. I was one of the first people among my peer group to have a projection TV so you could watch it on a big screen.
Oh, nice.
And we basically handed out ballots at the potluck buffet table.
Yeah.
I built a cardboard podium, spray painted it gold, put a foam ball on the end of a broomstick and pretended that was a mic, set it up in my alcove, and we pulled people up from the buffet table to to be presenters and acceptors. One guy did actually rehearse. He performed the song that one were sung that first year, The Man with Bogart's Face. But it was very silly, very spontaneous, and at the time very unique. I sent
Yeah.
out one press release, and a newspaper for which one of my friends worked covered us that very first year. It was the San Fernando Valley newspaper, which, if you know LA, that's really not that big a deal.
Yeah, no.
But the second year, I sent out a press release, and the second year was the year of Mommy Dearest and Tarzan the Ape Man, which, both of those I think are Razzie classics. And by the fourth year, one of my clients who knew that I did this, he said, you can't, I used to do it on Oscar night the first 3 years, and you're competing with,
Yeah.
that program. And he said, well, why don't you just do it the night before?
Yeah.
And that's when it really took off. Because media from literally all over the world are in LA to cover the Oscars. And unless they really want to watch rehearsals over and over and over again of the nominated, supposedly best songs, they've got nothing to do anyway. And it's a very, very simple concept. It's the Oscars turned on its head. Everyone has certainly seen at least a handful of bad movies. And some of the stuff we've nominated is, it was popular, even though we said it stank.
Yeah.
Rambo comes to mind. And Twilight, I think, is another franchise. But it's meant to be funny. It's not meant to be necessarily nasty. The two
No.
phrases I like to use are, we don't consider ourselves a slap in the face. We're more of a banana peel on the floor. And we are not saying, how dare you? We're asking, why did you? I mean, seriously, you're Helen
Amazing.
Mirren and they hand you the script for Shazam, Fury of the Gods, and you go, oh, yes, I think I'll do that. Why? And I would never, when the whole thing started, have imagined it would go this long,
Mhm.
become this well known. And it's arguably part of the award show landscape now. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, we're mentioned in that. My favorite moment in the whole history of the Razzies was when Sandra Bullock showed up to accept her Razzie on Saturday night.
Yeah.
And then on Sunday night, she not only won the Oscar, but as she walked up the red carpet on the Oscars, every TV crew said, weren't you at another show last night? Because I've always wanted to be mentioned. The Oscars are so full of themselves. I've always hoped we would at least, be
Yeah.
mentioned. And the whole red carpet evening, they were all asking her about her other award.
Yeah.
And she was funny. I still think Halle Berry was the most amazing. I assume you guys have seen her speech on our YouTube channel.
Yeah, it was incredible. I think it was one of those two that first put the Razzies on my radar. Kyle's more clued in on those things, but when I was like a teenager, I think it was one of those two moments that I was like, oh, hang on, they do this? Wow, that's so cool.
Well, she also, I thought it was funny. I think it was an Irish newspaper, some UK paper claimed she had agreed to appear at the Razzies.
Uh-huh.
And we're 20 years in at this point, and almost
Yeah.
nobody has ever shown up. So I got hold of her agent and I said, I don't know if this is true. If it is, wonderful, let us know what she wants. We will move heaven and earth. If it's not, we're not going to embarrass your client by
Yeah.
pushing her about it. That would not be appropriate. And I think she was so blown away that somebody would be that accommodating. She's
Yeah.
like, well, let me talk to her and see. She worked up a routine. If you've seen the speech, there's a woman
Yeah.
standing next to her at the beginning of it, a comedy writer from a show called Mad TV.
Uh-huh.
And she worked up a whole routine. And as she was about to go out on stage, her manager held up a velvet bag and it dropped down, and it was her Oscar.
Yeah.
And he goes, do you mind if she brings this on the stage with her? And I said, no, you know what? Could we get her to come out with the Oscar in one hand and the Razzie in the other? That would be perfect.
Yeah.
So it's just all around. It's the ultimate Razzie moment. I mean,
Absolutely.
I think she was enjoying herself. I know we were enjoying her appearance. And my favorite thing that we have learned since, somebody asked her about a year or so ago, well, what did you do with the Razzie? And she said, I went home and I set it on fire.
Yeah, I read that somewhere.
I just have this mental image of it's plastic and it just melting. I just thought that was terrific.
Yeah, I saw that Halle Berry destroyed hers, and I was just thinking, it's like, no, John's hard work. It was not Ben Affleck breaking it up. It's Halle Berry
Well, it
incinerating
actually is the one we handed her fell apart in her hand while she was making the speech. She thumped it on the podium and the raspberry bounced off it.
We interviewed Cindy Beagle a while ago, who received her
yes,
Razzie for
she asked for
Flintstones.
her, yes, as one of the, I think it's 37 screenwriters.
Yeah.
We actually, that year at the show, we gave the people presenting were screenplay rolls of toilet paper with the names, and they just unfurled them reading, I think they got through the names in about a minute, but according, I think it was to IMDb, it was literally people who were not necessarily credited, but who, wanted. Now, why you would want credit for writing the Flintstones, I don't know. But yes, Cindy Beagle is a wonderfully good-natured woman. She asked for hers, years and years later, and we were more than happy to accommodate her and get it to her.
Yeah, she told us it came with instructions on if any of the berries fall off, just stick it back on.
Push them back into the clay, yes.
Yeah. Okay, this segues nicely into a question I had here, which is, obviously the only stories we hear are the people taking it in good sport. Tom Green, Paul Verhoeven, Halle Berry, people who've turned up and accepted their awards. Do you know if that's reflective of how the awards are generally seen within the industry? And you mentioning managers there, like, are there any instances where the Razzies have had more weight than you expect? Because, like, I can see a lot of films which might covet like a Razzie win for marketing reasons because
Mhm.
it gets you a lot of attention.
Well, yeah, right now the people who made Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey are trying to get
Hmm.
hold of us to see if we would work with them, because
Yeah,
in their universe of filmmaking, a Razzie is a good thing.
absolutely. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. They'll fight tooth and nail, I imagine. Like,
But
put them in the
we
Colosseum
are
along with.
we have gotten some negative feedback. I have two stories I'd like to tell.
Yeah.
One of them is that when Sylvester Stallone in 1990, I think it was nominated for our first ever Worst Actor of the Decade, Razzie.
Yeah.
And I think everyone knew he was going to win that. The same newspaper that had run that very first article printed a story about that category. He put my home phone number
Oh
in the newspaper.
no.
Oh shit.
What?
Nah.
Is that not
And
against the law?
I don't know. My wife was not very happy,
Yeah.
but we got all kinds of, and then it went on the wires,
Yeah.
and we got a call. Person didn't say they were Stallone. They sure sounded like him.
Yeah.
And he was like, "Why do you always pick on me? My movies make money. What's wrong with you people?" And when he won the award, we said, now we had to say we can't prove this is him, but we did get a phone message from someone who sure sounds like the winner, and
Yeah.
here's his response to this award. And the audience thought it was absolutely hilarious. You
Yeah.
don't. This is the one of the things about the Razzies is, if you embrace it, I think you look good.
Yeah.
Myself, I think you seem to have a sense of humor. You have some
Mhm.
humility.
Yeah.
But if you
100%.
get all pissed off and bent out of shape and mad about it, you just look like a jerk.
Yeah.
If you were
Mhm.
to sue us, all we would
Ooh.
have to do is show up in the courthouse with the link to the page on Rotten Tomatoes about this guy's movie and say, look, we're not the only ones who
Yeah.
didn't think this guy made a good movie. The other one is I used to do uh, electronic press kits, they were called back then. I don't know if
Yeah.
they still
Yeah.
call that, but
EPKs.
promoting
Yeah.
events and movies and the behind the scenes. I did the one for the Academy Awards one year.
Oh wow.
The year that, what was the name of the Clint Eastwood Western, that not The Uninvited, but
Unforgiven.
there you go. And they loved I mean, I know Razzie history. I know Oscar history. It's part of the reason the Razzies exist.
Yeah.
But I actually had to tell them it was the 35th anniversary of Best Song. They didn't even know that. And I'm like,
Uh-huh.
really? But they loved everything that I did because they could tell I was an Oscar file.
Yeah.
And at the very last minute, when the last piece had gone out over the satellite and there wasn't anything they could do about it, I pulled 2 tickets to the Razzies out of my briefcase and handed them to the lady from the Academy.
Wow.
I just wanted to see what she would do.
Yeah.
And the expression I have always used is, you would have thought I had shat on her shoes. Her whole face sank, her demeanor, she turned into the Wicked Witch.
Yeah.
She's like, you're that John Wilson? And we've been working with you. And I said, lady, if we're both doing our job, we're not really competing with each other. We shouldn't be nominating the same stuff. But yeah, my client was not very happy with me, I must say. But I loved that moment because it's
Yeah.
so, to me, just because I'm that person doesn't mean that what I didn't do a good job for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's typical in my mind of the Oscars really think they are, the be all and end all. And frankly, like this year, I think they look like idiots for having ignored Barbie in the director and best picture category. I mean, I'm not saying because it was popular you needed to nominate it. Everyone thought that was everyone I know thought that was a good movie. What is your problem? What?
Yeah, I'm a huge Greta Gerwig fan, so don't get me started on this. Otherwise, we'll
Well, and you
ruin the
could tell
episode. But
when you looked at the list of nominees, you could tell they felt obligated, quote unquote, to nominate a woman. He
yeah,
had to go all the way over to France to find a woman director they could put in her place. Why
yeah,
couldn't you give it to the female American director who directed the most successful movie ever?
Yeah, it's the Oscars have been so weird. Like I think of the Oscars fan cheer moment where they had like
Mhm.
Zack Snyder's Justice League and just stuff like that, where I'm like, it's just, I don't know. It's yeah, it's like grasping at relevancy and wider audiences whilst doing all the wrong things. Like if you want to
Well,
have a
there
wider
what
appeal, yeah.
was it the Golden Globes that did that weird, you know, best movie everybody liked or something that blatantly
Oh yeah, most
Oh, yeah.
pander.
popular box
And
office
I'm like,
achievement
the
or whatever.
Oscars talked about doing a category like that,
Yeah,
and their
yeah,
snootiest members said, "Don't you dare! No,
yeah.
we don't want to go there."
Hmm.
But the other thing I think is interesting, the highest ratings they ever got for the Oscars, and ratings matter to them because they participate in the ad revenue.
Yeah.
The year they nominated and gave all the awards to Titanic, which I actually think was a good movie myself. I thought it
Yeah,
was
I,
an incredibly
Same.
interesting. I mean, yes, the dialogue was clunky and some of the acting was silly, but from a purely visual, filmic, dramatic structure point of view, that was a damn good movie, and it
yeah.
just needed to make the money it made. But they,
Mhm.
yeah, they got 72 million viewers in America alone that year. And I kind of think if they had been savvy enough to nominate Barbie, they might have gotten big numbers again.
Well, you see that with the Jimmy Kimmel thing they just released, where like they have that little sketch with him and America Ferrera and Gosling, and they're clearly like this is what people are interested in, this is what will draw eyeballs. But yeah, yeah. Anyway, I don't want to.
No,
As much as I'd love to discuss
we're
We're
Barbie.
here for
we're
the Razzies.
turning our spotlight on the wrong award. Sorry,
Yes.
It's
but
it's
I love trashing the Oscars almost as much as I love promoting the
yeah.
Razzies.
I can very easily get into it because yeah, I love debating these things. But you said before we hit record that we three share a similar perspective, having wasted
Yes.
comparable amounts of our lives watching these films. So we recently did our like wrap up, having watched all of them,
Mm.
where we did a ranking of all of them. So we'd like to invite you. Do you have a film that you consider to be the worst of all of the Razzies?
The only one, there's one I could never sit through, so I don't know if it's fair to judge it.
Yeah.
Kevin Costner in The Postman. I could never freaking get through that movie.
Oh,
Somebody gave me a laser disc of it, and I'm thinking I own the damn thing, but I can't. It's so weird and boring and slow and dead.
yeah, yeah.
But the one that I actually most of the time, if it's the right kind of bad movie, like a Showgirls or a Mommy Dearest, I actually love them. Xanadu is a great bad movie, also.
Yeah.
But Freddie Got Fingered, for which Tom Green actually did show up to accept his
Yeah.
award.
With his own
But
red
I
carpet.
just,
Yeah.
it's such a, yeah. I Up to a point we thought he was funny. When he wouldn't leave the microphone, not so much. But
That's kind of the
but
experience of Freddy Got Fingered, isn't it? Is there some of it is like,
but
hey, and it goes on and on and on.
yeah, yeah. And it's the only one I would not let my son see. I
Yeah.
actually that year, because we were going to show the horse clip and the elephant clip, and if you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And so I paid for a babysitter to keep my son during the show. We had no way of knowing if Tom Green, how he would actually act,
He brings an
and
elephant to the awards ceremony.
and aims the ejaculate at us. But we also, and I don't know if he knew this or not, I set up the lighting. We assigned him a seat right in the center. And every time we talked about one of his movies, a whole bank of lights turned on right in his face. And the rest of the house lights went down.
Yeah.
So he would have had to risk breaking his neck to get up to the stage, because we told him, we don't have time for you to accept. Your movie won like 5 awards or something.
Yeah.
And we said, please pick 3. Let us know which 3. And happy to have you come up to the stage. And yeah, he, I just think he's strange. I think he's a very angry person. I think his humor is not so much funny as it is bullying. And
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't find beating a woman in a wheelchair with a cane. I'm sorry, that's not my idea of humor.
Yeah. Yeah. I know
So
what you mean. Yeah.
yeah, just pretty much indefensible.
Mhm.
And yeah, and I'm trying to think if there's some of this stuff. I actually try to see everything that gets nominated. I'm short this year, the one with Anna de Armas and I think it's Chris Evans. I haven't actually.
I watched after you nominated it. You don't have a fun time ahead of you, John. Like,
Yeah.
it's not gonna be.
No, but I don't know. The ballots are out now and being voted. They went out last Friday, and they're we call it trending. Usually, when you've got 100 ballots in, you have some idea of what's likely to be the end result. It sometimes shifts around.
Yeah.
But yeah, you guys only saw the winners. I saw, now that I think about it, I've wasted 5 or 6 times as much of my life as you guys
Well,
have wasted yours.
the first year when you had, like, was it 10 nominees?
Yeah.
For Best Picture?
They were mostly movies that the voters were people I worked with at that trailer company. And I was also able to get, because I was friends with the people in the clips department there at that company. We didn't tell the boss we were doing the Razzies, but I had clips. Like I showed the song from Xanadu, the animated song. We showed a clip from Raise the Titanic. We showed, we all knew Can't Stop the Music because we had done the whole campaign for that thing. It actually had 2 or 3 songs in it that ended up being cut out. And it's a shame they did, because at least one of them was probably a more deserving worst song nominee than I think it was. I think it was the theme song that was nominated that first year.
It was the title track. Yeah.
I love the title track.
Well, I also, in the summer of 1980, right before I came up with the Razzies, I took myself on a tour of Europe. I had saved up years of vacation time, and everywhere I went in Europe, that they had a graphic that looked like the Village People had been shot out of a cannon, and the title was Der Village People. So it did get released widely in Europe. I don't know that anyone actually paid to see it, but
we're a little behind the US on cultural trends. Things like frozen yogurt, like bubble tea, only come over here a little bit later. So disco probably didn't die on the continent until like 10 years after in the US. So.
Still going strong in Italy,
The career of David Hasselhoff.
By the time Can't Stop the Music and Xanadu were released here in America, there had been an event of radio disc jockeys, like Detroit or somewhere, had staged an event in a sports stadium where everyone brought their disco records and threw them on a pile and lit them on fire.
Wow.
So, they were, when they started production on, and there were a couple of other ones. I actually think Roller Boogie was maybe a year earlier, the Linda Blair one. And there was something called the Big Apple, I think, or the Apple.
Yeah.
But there, when disco first exploded, it looked like it was, going to last.
Yeah.
No.
The Wiz as well.
Oh yeah, The Wiz is one of those movies that it just looked so depressing. I mean, you really felt like you were stuck on a L train to hell in that movie. And the joyousness of the classic Judy Garland version, I loved that when I was a kid. And this thing, it's like, I think it was Roger Ebert who said about the way you feel when you come out of Battlefield Earth, which is one of the other all-time Razzie winners. He said you will want to go home immediately and take 2 or 3 showers.
Yeah, your experience with publicity and marketing is shining through here, John, because that line "L Train to Hell" it could be a fantastic tagline. So we wanted to ask here about the Razzie Academy and the membership, because it sounds like from the very beginning you saying with co-workers it's always been a larger thing than just you. But could you tell us a bit more about how this expanded from your living room and co-workers to a membership which spans across the globe, really?
Yeah, it's the ballot when it went out to almost 1,200 people, and I think we have at least one member in each of our 50 states here in America, and we have something like 24 foreign countries. Well, originally it was pretty much local.
Yeah.
And then once it started getting media coverage, we had a website at the point when no one knew what a website was. And that's been a lot of the source of our recent and current growth.
Yeah.
And we like to point out that the membership is an interesting amalgamation of moviegoers, movie fans, movie buffs, whatever you want to call them, people who actually work in the industry. Some of the people who've won Razzies or been nominated for them have asked, can they participate?
Oh, wow.
And then we also have a fairly large number of what I would call film journalists, people who either review movies, so they're used to seeing this kind of crud, or who just write about the industry. And I think the bulk of it is movie buffs. But
Yeah.
I'd say maybe a quarter of it is journalists and a quarter of it is filmmakers.
Okay.
And it's interesting how people in the industry react. Like one of my favorite ones, the guy who wrote, speaking of Postman, as we were earlier,
Yeah.
the guy who wrote that had also written, I think it was LA Confidential.
Oh,
And so
wow.
he was one of the first to win an Oscar and a Razzie in the same weekend.
Yeah.
And he invited me and my wife out to Warner Brothers, and he posed with his Razzie and put it on a shelf. And I mean, I just saw, I hadn't remembered it. I just saw, I think it was on IMDb. He said the world would be a better place when the Razzies and the Oscars are both broadcast. The world needs both, which I thought was a pretty cool comment, especially from a Razzie winner.
I didn't know he was the source, but I have seen that quote. And yeah, I completely agree. And that's why this suggestion to shift it to the day before the Oscars is such a great move, because yeah, it's the perfect sort of like build up. Like they complement each other so well. I think you do really need both. I think it's just a fantastic
yin and
yin and
yang.
yang. Yeah, yeah.
I'm not sure which we are, yang or yin.
I want to ask, like, how the selection process works, because one of the many ways in which you have a tougher time than the Oscars is they get films submitting themselves for consideration, whereas presumably the Golden Raspberries doesn't have that. So how do you seek things out, particularly in the streaming era when the net is so wide?
Well, we were actually the first nearly 40 years, we followed the Academy rules, and we said that you have to have played in a theater.
Yeah.
And when the lockdown happened, the Academy finally woke up and said, okay, well, we'll let you do streaming. And we were delighted because it opened up a whole new universe of crap.
Oh, no.
But, and then they've
Pandora's
gone back
box,
now.
that.
I believe the Oscars have gone back to saying you have to be released in a theater. And we're like,
Yeah.
no, because a lot of this stuff is so awful it would never be in a theater.
Yeah.
And shouldn't be. But we try not to pick on stuff that it doesn't it has the excuse that it cost nothing, or that it was made in 5 days, that kind of thing. Although I have to say, one of the most nominated titles this year, and I hear they're doing a sequel, we may get screeners on that one, is Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey.
Yeah.
Number 2 in all the ways you can mean that. But we're not, for years we've tried to get people who, some of this stuff you really can't believe they don't know they made a bad movie. Cut me a break, although I have to say a big part of why I love Mommy Dearest is it had every credential in the world. It was a big best-selling book. It was an Oscar-winning star, an Oscar-nominated director, a major studio, a big budget, blah, 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 blah. And yet it's still, I have never seen that movie where the audience didn't turn on it and just start laughing.
Yeah.
One of my favorite stories is one of my best friends was taken to see it by a mutual friend who was a victim of child abuse.
Oh.
He, of course, took the film extremely seriously. And she said, I tried so hard. I was with Michael and I just knew he would be so offended. She said, I made it all the way to Tina, Bring Me the Axe, which is pretty far in to the movie.
Yeah.
It's not quite wire hangers, but but yeah, when they have every opportunity to do it right and they still make a Razzie, that to me is a lot more both impressive and distressing. And I need to be careful here in my Razzie movie guide book, I wanted to suggest that the white powder all over the blue tile bathroom floor in the clean up this mess scene
Yeah.
was not Bonami. It was something people traditionally put up their nose. That would explain so much about that movie. And in fact, the costume designer on the movie, as she walked out of the soundstage screaming and quit her job, she yelled, "I'm not working with that drug addict bitch another day."
Oh, wow.
Wow.
So yeah, I just can't, I don't know. Faye Dunaway, up to that point, Faye Dunaway really was a reputable actress. I mean, everybody who's made 20 movies has made at least one bad one, but
Yeah.
she seemed to be talented and focused and serious. And she refuses to talk about that movie.
Yeah.
I think she understands that her career went into the toilet that was behind her while she was scrubbing the bathroom floor when she did that movie. And I'm getting off on a tangent, but I always thought it was interesting. The original casting was Anne Bancroft
Oh,
as Joan
really?
Crawford.
Wow.
And I think Anne Bancroft probably could have pulled it off. But Anne Bancroft also, when they handed her the script, she said, "Nobody can play this. No, I don't want to do this."
Yeah. Impossible task, isn't it? Yeah.
Mommy Dearest splits us, where I fall a little more into the John Waters camp of I'm like, it's something. It reflects some aspect of Hollywood in an accurate way that makes me like it, whereas Kyle despises it.
Mommy Dearest is not. Yeah, it was not for me.
I have always held that Christina Crawford, who wrote the book, her emotional development stopped at the age of 9. And the book is a 9-year-old throwing a tantrum.
Yeah.
There's no way to prove. I mean, who really would know if, the no wire hangers and the Bonami and cutting down the rose bush and all that stuff. I don't know if that really happened, but I would think that it would be incredibly traumatic if you believed that happened to you, to attend that movie and see the audience laughing at it, which she did. And then I read somewhere she had a nervous breakdown shortly after that experience. But if it's true, it is a terrifying experience for any child.
Oh yeah.
But you just can't go that far off the ledge with the dialogue. I mean, even the wigs in that movie are funny. I'm sorry, but that's just, I have a friend who has a website about award shows, and he and I have argued about it for years. He thinks she's brilliant in that, and I'm like, come on.
I struggled where I was like, Anne Bancroft, I don't like, I know what you mean, and she could have pulled it out if it was a completely different movie, but with that direction, with that script, I think you want Faye Dunaway doing what she does, because it makes the whole thing more
100%.
Yeah. Okay, so in our watching of the Razzies, as we've been kind of evaluating it and the choices we agree with, the choices we disagree with, something which we focus on is the concept of like Razzie-worthy. So what we want to ask you is like, what are the qualities that shine out to you as making a film Razzie-worthy and deserving of recognition?
Well, we look at several different parameters.
Yeah.
We pay attention to what I call Razzie pedigree.
Yeah.
In the aftermath of Mommy Dearest, Faye Dunaway was nominated for, Razzie after Razzie after Razzie.
I remember reading her name a lot.
She never quite got back up off her knees after that movie. It took her forever. We look at Hollywood's own yardstick of what's good and what's not, which is the financial.
Yeah.
I think it's called Box Office Mojo. And on Wikipedia, they often tell you how much the budget was and how much it grossed.
Yeah. We've used that too.
Pay attention. Our members throughout the year let us know if they've seen stuff that they think we should be looking at.
Okay,
and then one that we've been using recently, we do also pay attention to critical response.
Yeah.
For years, we worked closely with the people who run Rotten Tomatoes.
Really?
We would give them an exclusive on our nominations and winners announcements every year. We'd give them a 6-hour lead time over the rest of the media.
Yeah.
But I like to look at, because it is the public speaking, IMDb has viewer rankings, user rankings.
Yeah.
And those are, I don't know that all those people saw the movie. Sometimes they get 1,000 votes before the movie's ever played.
Absolutely,
But
yeah.
to me, that's the movie going public speaking. And I'm trying to think what it was the other day. I saw that something had gotten 2.1 out of 10 or something
Oh wow.
from IMDb users. Yeah. Now they are, there are an awful lot of comic book fans on IMDb. And so, the ratings on stuff like The Flash and Shazam and Ant-Man, that kind of stuff, those are not all reliable.
Yeah, that's not
But,
yeah.
and then it's also interesting to see how many people have seen. Like I've been surprised a few times lately. I'll be watching a classic movie and I'll look it up on IMDb and I'll go, seriously, only 2,000 people on IMDb have ever even seen North by Northwest? Are you kidding? And then I like to try and find the ones that are funny bad. And I don't know that we have even one of those in this year's list. I have to say they were all mostly a slog to sit through.
Yeah, I agree with that
You
judgment.
get more of the, dead thing left by the roadside kind of movies than you do, the chestnuts that bloom in the snow. But that's another one that I loved, Lonely Lady with Pia Zadora. And I love telling the story. I actually worked on the campaign for it.
Oh wow.
And so I saw the rough cut before they had shown it to anyone. I was one of the first people to ever see the movie. And shortly after, they screened it for my client and me. And we were the only ones in the screening room, and so we could react as we wished to. We both fell out of our chairs, pounding our fists on the carpet with tears streaming down our face from laughing so hard. And we were thinking, but we have to make a believable trailer out of this thing.
Yeah.
And then a couple of months later, they screened a recut based on the preview cards. I heard it got the worst preview cards Universal ever got.
Wow.
And they tried to cut all the laughs out of it. Well, you cut the laughs out of that movie and you've got a short subject.
Yeah.
But the man sitting next to me in the screening room for that was the producer. And he didn't know I was the guy who did the Razzies. He just knew I was the copywriter for his trailer. And he turns to me and he goes, well, you're one of the few people who's seen the rough cut and this version. What do you think?
Yeah.
And I put on my best, I hope I can get through this without laughing face. And I said, I cannot believe you cut out the scene where the keys on the typewriter become heads and zoom toward the camera and speak to her. I said, it's like the culmination of the whole story arc of the movie. Her character, I said, it's like the family of Scarlett O'Hara telling her about the Red Earth of Terra. How could you take that out? I'm so disappointed that you didn't honor that. And when we got to the elevator, my client goes, what the fuck was that? What are you doing? And I said, I want that clip and I want it in color from the movie. And if they don't put it back in, I'm going to have to show the damn thing in black and white.
Wow.
And I must have been convincing. They put it back in.
Yeah. And thank you for it, because it's the best part.
Yeah. Well, the thing where she's screaming and her...
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah.
I had no idea. Like we touched on it in the book, but yeah, that Machiavellian stroke of brilliance. Wow, yeah, you need to be
My
applauded
son
for
says
that.
I was kind of putting my thumb on the scale, and I said, well, okay,
know.
I didn't make them go back and shoot the scene. They already had it.
Yeah,
I just gave them reason to put it back in.
people can choose to take notes or not take notes. I don't.
Yeah, I obviously, although if he produced that film, he is, taste impaired.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm feeling a bit more positive about your mental health, because we were really worried that you were some all-seeing eye who had to watch absolutely everything, but hinting that you like the fact that you haven't seen Ghosted and the viewership, like the membership has a wider role in selecting things, does make me feel better that you're not completely.
Yes, I don't always.
Yourself.
Yes, I don't. I haven't got my eyes held open with toothpicks like in Clockwork Orange, and I don't always agree with what they pick. In retrospect, I suppose we look good for having given a Razzie to Leonard Part 6 with Bill
Yeah.
Cosby in it. But if I'm not mistaken, and I might be misremembering this, one of the other nominees that year was a thing called Tough Guys
Yeah.
Don't Dance. Have you ever seen that? Oh my God. I worked on the
Yeah.
campaign for it. They picked me to interview on camera Norman Mailer talking about the making of
Okay.
that movie. And I swear to God, he meant the movie to be a classic film noir. He did not have comic intent. And when it started getting rave reviews as a comedy, suddenly Norman Mailer went with that. And we were left with, like, the studio was furious with us. Well, if he told you it was a comedy, why didn't you sell it? And we're like, oh, come on. It's not a comedy on
Yeah.
purpose. Give me a break. But there's, he did win. I think he tied with Elaine May for Ishtar as worst director for that. But yeah, you will note that Norman Mailer did not ever direct another movie. So far as I know, he may have done a
Yeah.
documentary, but he was not asked back to the ball.
With this being such a big part of your life and going on for as long as it has, have you found anything has shifted in the way that you watch movies as a result of running the Razzies?
Well, more from the perspective of having done hundreds of movie trailers. I watch a movie like a trailer maker. Like, I still catch myself, like, I'll be watching a movie and there'll be a scene where one of the billed actors has their back to camera and they turn around and have an expression on it. I'm like, that would be a great ID shot. And I'm like, well, I don't do that anymore. But I don't need to take notes. But yeah, I think one of my favorites that I did the campaign for, and I walked out of the screening with it in my head, went home and typed it up immediately. I did the trailer for 10, which, Bo Derek had a relationship with the Razzies in later years. That was her one popular and actually arguably funny movie. And my boss did not like what I wrote and did not want to show it to the client. I think it was Warner Brothers. And his partner said, I think what John did is pretty good. We should let them pick. And he was pissed off when they picked mine. But the other direction I remember on that was, don't show Julie Andrews. Don't show her. And we're like, she's Mary Poppins and Sound of Music. She's the only, nobody knew who Dudley Moore was yet. And certainly nobody knew who Bo Derek was. And we kept saying, she's the only star name you have in there. We have to. And I said, plus which, the contract said they had to bill her. It was her husband who directed it. And I, the disrespect shown to her, who, when I was a kid, I thought she was wonderful. I loved Mary Poppins. But yeah, the industry gets over people much faster than they probably ought to.
Yeah. Okay, so since we're kind of coming up to the current day with things, how do you feel about the cinematic landscape now? Because obviously you've got like a relatively unique perspective, being this anthropologist of cinema and trends. Are there any things which like disappoint you? Any trends, genres, or performers that you're...
Well, the biggest trend that disappoints me in the 40-some years the Razzies have been going, the technology has advanced to the point anything the human mind can imagine can be depicted on the screen. And I think it's very sad what they're doing with that. I'm not saying, visualize world peace and put it on the screen. But, two people beating the crap out of each other or blowing each other's noses off with shotguns or, no. I think movies have an incredible potential to show us and help us appreciate things we otherwise would never see or feel or know about. And I just think that the industry, quote unquote, is so focused on the money that they sometimes forget. Now, occasionally something will get made that actually, I don't know if it slips under the radar or what. Everything Everywhere All at Once. What I loved about that movie was, one of my pet peeves is, because I've seen so many movies, 10 minutes into most movies, I can tell you who the bad guy is, how he's going to what's going to, and that movie just every 10 seconds surprised the crap out of me. I thought that movie was so wonderfully, not scattershot, but random and unconcerned. If you don't like it, you don't like it. But this is what I wanted to do. And I was shocked that the Academy actually gave it the award because it's so unlike so many of the things that they've over the years, they've shown themselves to be a bunch of little old ladies, if you
Yeah,
ask me.
I know they went to lengths, like with Oscar pools and trying to predict things. I used to be a lot better at calling what was going to win, like okay, this biopic, this whatever period drama. But since they've diversified the membership, I found it a lot harder to call. And Everything Everywhere All at Once is, I think, the only time where my favorite film of the year has gone on to win Best Picture. That was a great on deadly ground speech there. I'm just like I'm inspired about the potential for cinema to create positive change, and it's clear there from what you were saying that this is coming from a good place. You're not like you said, the Razzies aren't trying to beat people
Oh,
down.
yeah.
It's like a celebration.
Yeah, it comes from, and people find this very hard to believe, it comes from a place of love. I would be the first person to say something was a good movie when I've seen one. And in fact, screening stuff for Razzie consideration this year, I saw a thing called, I think it was called Mafia Mama or
Oh,
something with Toni Collette,
okay.
which got horrible reviews. And I'm sorry, I thought it was funny. I thought she was wonderful in it. Again, it was not entirely
Yeah.
predictable. It was kind of off the beam in terms of what, it wasn't really predictable. I wouldn't say it's an Oscar contender, but it's certainly, something like 73% of critics hated it. And I'm like, why? What? And I guess I've always known I have eclectic taste. When I was in college, I managed a movie theater near UCLA when I was going
Yeah.
to the film school. And my boss had this theory that if I hated something, it would be huge at the box office. If I liked it, they were going to have to lay people off.
I like that.
And I came in the first day we had Exorcist 2, which is one of the great bad
Love it.
movies. If you haven't
I
seen
love
that,
it.
just psychotic. And I told him, I said, I told my boss, I said, Mr. Bohm, everyone is going to hate this movie. Where it's going to die. And he said, oh my God, you hate it. It's going to be so huge. We're going to, and I said, no. You don't understand. It's going to be laughed off
Yeah.
the screen. And which it was. 3 weeks in, the only people coming to see it were coming to laugh at it. I've got another one of my favorite stories. The head of Warner Brothers, Warner Brothers called John Boorman back from Ireland to reshoot stuff.
Wow.
It was so bad. And the very second night, they just took a meat axe and cut the last 10 minutes off the movie because that was some of the biggest laughs. But they recut the whole thing, they reshot it, they re-narrated it, they did this whole thing. And this elegant looking man in a very expensive suit came up to me, and I was in a uniform as the manager. And he goes, I hear they're showing a recut of this movie tonight. What do you think of it? And I didn't know who he was. And I said, well, I've been watching it for 3 weeks. And if I were Warner Brothers, I would try to convince Mel Brooks to put his name on this movie. They would make a fortune. And he chuckled and then walked into the theater. And my boss came out and said, what were you saying to the head of Warner Brothers?
This is amazing. Just seeing you as like this Zelig figure, like something like Barton Fink, just having interactions with these people. That's amazing. Wow. Okay, so we've just got a couple final things here. So that ties into what we were saying. We're really big fans of the Redeemer Award. So we'd like to get your opinion on that. What are some of the performers who've most surprised you with something they pulled out of their locker?
I think a couple of years back when Eddie Murphy did, I think it was Dolomite is my name.
Yeah, my
Was
name
that
is
the name?
Dolomite. Yeah.
Yeah, and he at once and the same time, he blamed and backhandedly thanked us for convincing him to stop making shit
Really? Wow,
movies.
yeah.
which he's one of the few to ever say that. He said, "I was winning Razzies up to butt."
Yeah.
But
Because he was the Dreamgirls Norbit thing, wasn't he? Where that
Mhm.
supposedly like tanked his chances of winning the Oscar, wasn't it?
well, he was a very bad sport when he didn't win
Mm.
the Oscar for supporting actor in Dreamgirls. In fact, somebody lent me the video of that year's Oscars, and I was trying to see if you could see, but they don't. The camera follows the winner up to the stage, so you
Yeah.
wouldn't have. But I heard he got up and stomped out in a bad
Oh,
mood and
wow.
yelled at people. And then another one that worked the other way. We thought it was very brave of Sylvester Stallone to turn the Rocky franchise over to the people
Yeah.
who did Creed,
Mhm.
and he was actually pretty good in that. I have to say, how many Rambo movies did he make?
Kyle.
6. Seemed like 17. But he won the Redeemer Award for that, and he thought he was going to win the Academy Award for it. And we contacted, I don't know if it was his manager or his agent, but the person we contacted said, "Oh, that would be brilliant if he accepted that. I'll see what I can do." And he was convinced he was going to win the Oscar, and he wanted to say F you to the Razzies. And it's like the dog with the bone and reflected in the water. He didn't get
Mark
one.
Rylance had other ideas. Okay, so we're at the end of our allotted time. So just to wrap things up, we did have a question about movies you've struggled to finish, but you covered that. But we just want to say quickly, like, Absolute Proof was our bottom. How did you watch that?
You're going to have to refresh my memory. It must not
Mike Lindell, the My Pillow guy election
Oh
fraud.
God! Oh,
It's just him
I will be
ranting
honest. I got about a half hour into it, and it's all just numbers rotating behind the guy's head.
2.5 hours.
Every once in a while, like I was very happy to see earlier today. I looked up Donald Trump on IMDb, and I knew he had won one Razzie. He actually has won 3. He was in a documentary that I'm trying to remember what it was. They did this weird.
Michael Moore's Fahrenheit 11/9. Is that it?
No, that was George W. Bush,
Oh.
who also won a Razzie.
Oh, sorry.
But no, it was the Sousa's movie, and he did this weird graphic that was half Lincoln's face and half Trump's, which was kind of scary. He won his.
Did he win in Ghost Can't Do It? I can't remember if he won. Yeah.
Yes, I was going to say he was nominated. He played himself, and he was nominated for Worst New Star, which I don't remember who he lost to. Someone else in that same movie, I think. But he won Worst Supporting Actor playing himself, which we thought was funny. But yeah, and then when you look at the rest of his awards on IMDb, that's pretty much all he's ever won is Razzies. He's been nominated for Emmys and stuff, but yeah, and we always wondered because the Razzies get enough publicity. You would think somebody handling his press would know about it. Whether they would have the balls to tell him, I don't know. But
a lot of people say
that you got to do the thing, with the hands, with the
any president. Obama has 0 Razzies. I have 3. I'm the most successful president in Razzie history.
One of my other favorite clips on the Razzie YouTube channel, we had a guy who did an incredible Donald Trump present Worst Actress at I think it was the 35th, maybe. But he does these things like, he said, Jennifer Lopez, she's not really Mexican, but we're going to throw her back over the wall anyway. Trump is very fun to make fun of, but geez, I hope what might happen doesn't. I think we all, I think.
Let's not jinx
could
anything.
Be nuclear winter.
Yeah. So we've run over. So thank you for being so generous with your time. It's an incredible pleasure.
I appreciate your interest and I admire your intestinal fortitude.
Yeah. We just want to say, like, thanks for joining us, but also thanks for everything, really, because we wouldn't have a show without you. And me and Kyle have had some great times watching movies that we never would have watched if the Razzies did not exist. So
Well, you'd have known better than to watch.
yeah, would my life have been better if I hadn't seen Bolero and that guy drizzling honey all over Bo Derek? Yeah, perhaps it would have, but I don't know.
Is that
Yeah.
Bolero, isn't it? The honey or not?
Yeah. It's like
let me tell you one last story, and
Yeah.
then I'll let you go. When Ghosts Can't Do It was theatrically released, it was only released in select cities, quote unquote.
Yeah.
I was visiting my brother in the San Francisco Bay Area, and I opened his newspaper, and there was an ad for it.
Yeah, we're still
Did it
recording.
crash?
Continue, sorry.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Okay.
Is it Kosygin? What is the name of the guy
who's birthmark Soviet? Gorbachev?
from the 80s?
I froze.
There you go, Gorbachev.
Yeah.
Yes, my brother wanted to go see Gorbachev speak in San Francisco, and I said, well, you can go see him. I'm going to go see Bo Derek.
Yeah.
He'll be back. She won't. This movie's never going to play anywhere again. And he relented and went with me. And he, for years after, he was like, you dragged me to that freaking and it played to an audience of maybe 7 people, and 3 of them were me and my wife and my brother. And it truly was an excruciating movie. I mean, I don't know if you guys. Sounds like
I actually prefer
it,
Ghosts Can't Do It to Bolero. I don't know if that's controversial, but I definitely preferred it.
No. I mean, Ghosts Can't Do It is so. I mean, that thing where Anthony Quinn is supposed to be a ghost, and it looks like they've taken a pair of pantyhose and wiggled them in front of the camera instead of paying for an optical. Yeah, of the 3 they did, I have to say that comes the closest to being watchable, but it's still pretty ridiculous.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining us.
All right.
Best of luck for this year's Razzies. So the 2024 Razzies are on March the 9th, and you can look for our next episode with the latest horror that John and the Golden Raspberries membership have inflicted on us on March the 12th. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
I enjoyed it thoroughly.